Okay, so we'll move on to the session. Good evening. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Kumaran. I am the head of Computer Science and Engineering Department, JI Engineering College. We are privileged to host the Skill Fest webinar series, season 4. And on behalf of JIA Group of Institutions, we welcome you all to the webinar on modern application development using Agile approach. So today we are pleased to welcome our speaker, Mr. Guru Sharanyas from Athena Health Technologies Private Limited. We extend a warm welcome to you, Guru. Today's webinar gives you a glimpse of creating a full functional user interface web application using modern frameworks and industry-level agile processes. Before getting into the session, I request the participants to make a note of the instructions as usual. So at the end of the session, everyone should submit the feedback form. The feedback form you can find at top of the chat box as a sticky note. So everyone should submit the feedback form so that the e-certificate will be generated through which. And I request everyone to type your name in the capital letter so that it will be legible when you get the certificate. And also I request to provide a valid email ID because some of the certificates are returning back because of the invalid email ID. So request everyone to submit the feedback form through which the certificate is generated. Uh, and the second, the technology used here is purely rely on the strength of the local bandwidth. If we have any issues, audio or video, you can click reconnect button. So reconnect button, it's placed on top of the screen. So as the red color labeled reconnect. So you can click that so that you will resume the webinar. And there is any technical issues from our side, we will back in maximum of 30 seconds. So do not leave the room or close the window. Okay, and in some cases, if you are going out of the webinar, you cannot enter again because need to re-register again, and you can get back into the webinar. So thing. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and select question and answer mode, QA mode, so that it's easy for us to identify the questions, and we will address all your questions at the end. The recorded version of this webinar will be available in YouTube after 24 hours, and you can watch the replay of videos of all our webinars through YouTube. You can search by using the topic of webinar. So with this note, now without further delay, we will turn the time over to the speaker. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Guru Sharanyas. Guru Sharan is a young and enthusiastic IT professional graduated from Anna University in the information technology discipline. He always look at opportunities to place himself at a challenging position. Always hunger for knowledge. Highly self-motivated professional with more than 7 years of experience in healthcare software domain. He has taken up all roles in software development process such as developer, design architect, tester, test automation engineer, product owner, and DevOps engineer. Currently leading a team on web application development in public cloud at Athena Health Technologies Private Limited. With this brief introduction, so without wasting our time, we will move on to the session. I'm very glad to welcome Guru Sharan to present. Over to Guru.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always happy to share knowledge. As you said, I'm really enthusiastic about learning new stuff, and it's really great to help people do the same, right? So hope my AV is clear and the presentation is visible to everyone. And let's get started, right? So yeah, I had a slide actually telling about myself, but the professor did a good job at that. Thanks for those kind words. But I still would like to focus on the bold parts here, right? So I'm a huge lover of software engineering itself, not just development. And you'll know like what else is there towards software engineering as we progress through this session, right? And I also love learning new stuff. And these two qualities today drive what is required for industry professionals. So you could be a really good developer or a programmer, you could make it into a company. But how you grow within that, how you place yourself outside of the rest of the folks is by keeping learning new stuff, keep yourself updated, right? So with this, I also have my LinkedIn link, so feel free to ping me like even after this session if you really have any questions, right? So moving on, what will we be learning today, right? Number one, we'd see if web applications really thrive in today's world, right? So today we are living in the mobile age, and if web applications really are useful in today's world, number one. Number two, we'll also see how new organizations, right? So we are living in a startup world. Every nook and corner, there are new startups coming up. So how such organizations try to architect their web applications for really fast delivery. So you don't want to sit on a project for a long time, like a month or so, and then deliver something really that you don't know if it's going to work or not. So we'll see how we are going to do fast delivery. And that is where agile development comes into picture. So it's a way of engineering a product so that you are really able to deliver things faster and get feedback earlier, right? And as a bonus, I thought I'll also share a quick development of a fully functional web application. If time permits, I'll try to keep it in less than 30 minutes. If not, we'll skip some parts of it and see the product alone. Just to show you how agile development makes the entire engineering process really fast, right? And finally, I'd like to give some more topics that you could learn yourself in the internet. I find that internet is a plethora of information with a lot of knowledge out there, which is waiting to be absorbed by us. So that is where I find most of my knowledge, and that is really a great source of information. So with that, let us jump into our first topic. So the question there is the important question, right? So web applications, seriously, we are living in the mobile world, and why even we talk about web applications, right? So the fact of the matter is there is no escaping web applications as such, right? So mobile applications are actually mobile optimized, and they help you serve the mobile world. But then web applications, you develop once and they are compatible with almost all devices, even mobile devices, right? You just have a small application in mobile that opens up the world to the entire internet, right? So formally, there are like three important reasons why web applications still are useful and still will be useful for a really long time. So number one, faster development, which you will see. Number two, cheaper development, because web development professionals are available a lot, and there is no niche market. Plus, the maintenance cost of a web application is much cheaper than the development cost of a mobile application, right? Thirdly, compatibility. This small image that I have put on the screen, right? So shows you a mobile application. Applications fit into mobile. So you might have an iPhone, which has a different set of applications. You would have an Android phone, which has a set of different applications. But hey, look on the right side. It's just one application that is going to work on all the platforms that we have. So compatibility is super awesome about web applications. And then there are also organizations that build web applications in the initial phase so that they can get faster and cheaper products out there. And then they transform into a mobile world. So they have both web applications and mobile applications running. So mobile applications come into picture when you want to give offline access to the user. So the user doesn't have to stay connected to the internet to access your website, access your application, right? So that is where the power of mobile apps come. But then today, with launch of 3G, 4G, and 5G, which is coming soon, I don't think internet is going to be a problem anymore in the future. And therefore, web applications will still continue to rule majority of the software industry. Let me proceed on to how web applications were architected in the initial phases, right? So computer professionals, you know that indexing always starts with 0. So I put 0, the monolith, and number 1, structured monolith. So initially we had web applications developed, put into a server machine, and that server running forever, and it connected to a different database server. And end users always try to access it through browsers, right? We have multiple browsers, Internet Explorer, which was recently released as Edge. We had Firefox, Opera, and all such things. So all these web applications, all these web browsers help you access the internet. And we have an organization has its own application server, which gives the HTML, CSS, and JS content to the browsers, which display to the user in the end, right? So that was monolith. And then we had structured monolith when people started segregating their components within that application server, right? You might have heard of popular frameworks like Model, View, Controller, and all that, right? So they had separate view layer, they had separate business layer, they had separate data access layer, so that they can manage changes, they can do some fault tolerance and all that, very limited to that particular component. And as you know, there might be number of languages out there today that support this super application development. We have PHP, ASP, JSP, and whatnot. And there are multiple frameworks that give you like ready to run servers really fast, like Spring Boot, Struts, and JT, and all that. And most of them are open source, so they come free of cost to develop. So why did we even move away from this, or why are we trying to move away from this in the modern world, right? So number one, scaling cost. When I say cost, it's not just in terms of money, it's in terms of resources as well. Say I have a lot of users using my application and my server CPU is not enough. So I have to bring an entire new server with all these layers again, right? So that is going to cost me a lot in terms of resources and effort to bring it up. And similarly, if I have to increase my CPU or memory for this existing application server, it might cause downtime, right? So, and overall maintenance cost. So you have a server that runs always with the fullest capacity. Today, you say you have some web applications that are used more in the weekends, but less on the weekdays. In these cases, I can't initially I don't have control to kind of scale it based on my requirement. So with all these in mind, they introduced the concept of elastic cloud or cloud computing and all that, right? So the term elastic was attached to cloud because it's really elastic, right? Whenever you need, you can actually pull it for serving a lot of users. Whenever you don't need, you can kind of contract it so that it is always really less resource intensive. So that way you kind of save some cost and all that. So that is more about cloud computing, and that is where we'll try to go in the next slide. So let's see how modern applications architecture themselves. So here, if you see, I have given the number as infinity here. So we started from 0, 1. There are multiple other architectural patterns in between. You might have heard of service-oriented architecture, SOA, and that some we had BPELs and all that, right? So today most companies try to go towards microservices architecture for a lot of reasons. Number one, we stopped the concept of using a single application server. So we now have multiple small application servers. Probably they run on the same hardware, but that is not really relevant here. You have multiple services running. So UI is served static. So today we have multiple frameworks. I'll show you in my demo that will actually, make a UI application really, really great without much backend work. And all the data go into microservices. So there may be a number of microservices that kind of group all the data. For example, one microservice can take care of search functionality. Some microservice can take care of shopping functionality. Some of them can take off the checkout. I believe you earlier had a session on e-payments and all that, right? So by way of segregating them into such microservices, and there are cases where each microservice has its own database, or they can share the same data store and all that. So the advantage they got with that is really great. So when you deploy something, when you want to update something, you kind of tend only to restart that particular service, and as such your application is functional except for that small feature, right? Say I want to make some change to my shopping cart page, I just bring down and update my shop service. There are in fact newer technologies to do that with zero downtime as well. So that is how that is the reason we kind of move towards this microservice architecture. And you kind of have an API gateway in between so that you can balance the load between different microservices, between different geographies. Say you have users both in India, you have users in Russia, USA, all around the globe. And you can have microservices running in different parts of the world through different CDN servers and all that. So you can have your API gateway kind of target specific geo-based users to specific microservices and all that, right? So a good example is Amazon.in and Amazon.com. Amazon.com serves the US mostly, but internationally. Whereas Amazon.in is a smaller version of that, which is really relevant for India. And I don't remember a time when Indians actually go to Amazon.com anymore. So that is how they kind of structure their applications today, because it kind of gives you a lot of flexibility towards deploying updates and all that. And UI becomes really powerful here, giving a lot of experience-related stuff to the end users, right? And of course, every approach has its own disadvantages, and here we do have challenges as well. So operational cost, yes, there are multiple servers running, but then it is possible in elastic environment to actually bring down the resources when your application is less used, and expand it whenever you need it. So that is addressed by cloud. Secondly, there are too many moving parts. As I said, there are multiple microservices in picture, and there's a lot of things that you want to do. So how organizations manage this is they build smaller teams. So every team kind of owns one microservice. A team can have just 3 or 4 members owning that microservice, making changes to that microservice, and deploying that microservice. So that way, they kind of de-risk the process of too many moving parts. One team is responsible for one component, and that team really makes sure that component is always available. The third challenge is, as I said, a number of teams may be required. Team building is quite difficult. You need to be an expert in the entire process of that microservice, be it development, be it testing, be it deployment, and all that. I assure you that many organizations today are trying to go from the monolith to microservices architecture. A lot of companies have also succeeded in this process, right? So, and they are seeing returns. Even though the cost is high, by way of customer satisfaction, faster delivery, they kind of recover the cost. So that cost becomes investment, and they start seeing profits, right? So let me move on to development process. Now we saw how architectures are designed, right? Let's see how they are implemented. All right. So this should be familiar for a lot of computer science students. I don't know if we have a lot of computer science students here, but this should be familiar to them, right? We have the waterfall diagram, we have the iterative diagram here. So why there are 2 diagrams basically, right? So there are multiple cases where waterfall really works, and that's why I put waterfall still works. The reason is there are so many industry applications that still follow waterfall. But then why did we even have agile? And if you see here, it still says requirements, development, testing, and release, which is almost the same as the waterfall. So the only difference here is you have multiple iterations here, multiple small iterations here. So take every circle in this diagram as a small feature of the application or the entire application itself, right? So if you see, it starts really small. So iterations give better customer satisfaction. You start delivering something really small and then a small increment. When I say iteration, it is a complete deliverable feature, meaning it is completely delivered to the user and the user starts using by the end of this release. So say I start small, inside the smallest circle, I start small. That smallest iteration is usually referred to as most viable product, MVP. So we'll build a small MVP, we'll give it to the users, we'll let them use it, we come back with the feedback that forms the requirement for the next iteration. So if you see, the next iteration is a little bigger than the previous iteration, but then the difference between the two is still small and the team can develop it within an iteration period, right? So I say iteration period, development effort, and all that. So usually in an interactive session, I ask this question to my audience. So how long do you think an iteration would be? So in the interest of time, I'm going to answer myself here. So an iteration is usually just 1 week or 2 weeks long. So in the waterfall model, most development process take 1 week for requirements, 1 week for prototyping, 2 to 3 weeks for development, and 1 week for testing, and then release, like a couple of days for release, which gives you like 1.5 months for releasing a single product to the user, end user. I agree it will have all the features, but then it's going to take a long time for the user to start seeing the feature, long time for organization to start making the money, right? So in the iteration, an MVP will be delivered to the user, say in 1 or 2 weeks. You will start seeing the users using it. Probably the organization can also make money from that, right? So that is where the power of Agile comes. And then you develop a feature on top of it, which is again released in another week. So the more you build things into iteration, the more you touch base with your users get engaged a lot. And that gives the organization the power, right? So customer satisfaction is at most important for any organization, even for earning money as well as giving service, right? So let us proceed on to see how we kind of apply this into a small practical application that I built today. Okay, so the context is we'll build a small gallery application for a furniture company with a basic feature. It will have a couple of some images that will be like a showcase, and then you'll have a way to request for quotation. So as I said, this is a very small application. Say it's a startup company who are doing furniture business, and so the overall requirements are on your left side, right? So you need a web application that supports a way of showcasing a lot of products in a gallery. Then you need users to be now able to navigate and search for images that they want, and then you need a way of showing them how to request for a quotation, right? So usually in the agile in the classic waterfall model, you get your requirements, you start designing and coding. So that's the last point. Let's get coding. But in iteration, we stop immediately. Don't go there. So we come to the right side. I believe we have a mix of audience here. So some of you might end up becoming software developers or engineers. Some of you might end up becoming project managers or product owners. Some of you might end up becoming UX designers, like UI designers and stuff like that. So iterative process needs all of these roles to be on the same page, right? All of you should think in terms of iteration. So you should always have the picture of the end product in your mind, but you should always think in small iteration. So in our case, we are going to build a small MVP, right? Iteration 1. We'll build a small page that will display a list of images, and it will have a link with phone number and email to contact for quotation. So it kind of satisfies the basic need for the application, right? So we kind of have a way of displaying the products we have. We kind of have a way of asking for quotation also, right? So that is going to be our MVP, the most viable product, our first iteration that we are going to deliver. So now if we deliver that, actually people can use it and get quotation. So what is going to be our second iteration? We are going to make it into a neat gallery that you can navigate using links, and so that users will be more engaged with the website. They can find what they want easier. So that is going to be iteration 2. So imagine after a week or something, you give us such a nice feature into your application. User is going to feel that, hey, this organization is actually working for me. They are actually doing something really great. They gave me a product within 1 week, and now they are making updates on it so that my work is easier. So that's the kind of connection that every organization wants to build with their customers, right? So final iteration, which is like the complete product in our use case. I know this is a very simple application, but in our use case, we are going to enable users to search. So say a user wants to search for something, say a black table or something like that, they can search it and we'll kind of have it. I have the link of the final product in the presentation, so it will be shared later and you could take a look at it. But let's go to the development process as such. And for this, I'll be using some tools that are listed here. I have Microsoft Visual Code as an IDE. You can install any of these by simply searching the internet and downloading it and installing it. So I'll be using something called Node Project Manager. So I use Node.js for development. I use NPM Node Project Manager to manage my entire project, to install dependencies and all that. People who are familiar with Java or JSP might heard of Maven, and I don't know, there are a lot of technologies, and I feel NPM is really good for small use cases. So I'll be using NPM. I'm going to use a really new framework. I mean, not new, it's been there for like a little more than a couple of years. It's called React.js. You might have also heard of AngularJS, which is another framework for UI. React.js enables you to build UI into small components and then put them together and have a final user interface. And all these are going to happen without any backend, so that you know the real power of a static UI application. And then we'll be using Google Firebase, which is Google's cloud services, to host our website. So by the end of this, I'm not just going to build a website on my machine, but I'm actually going to build it, and you are going to be able to see it as well at the end of this session, right? So that is the end goal. So we have an end-to-end application deployed to production as well, right? So let's get into it. Demo time. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that the demo video is seen, right? Let's share it. All right. That's the mirror effect. So as I said, we'll be using Firebase for our first level of deployment of the application, right? So you go to firebase.google.com and then you create a new project. So these are all free to some level, so you can really get started right away. So you log into your Google account if you have not logged in. Right now I have already logged in, as you see here. So then you create a new project. So I have a couple of projects of my own as well. Let's give a good name to our project as well, right? So webinar furniture, I think that name was already taken as part of my thing. Yeah, it was taken. You see the small thing here, it happens something telling that the name was taken. So I'm keeping my project name as webinar fun and continuing. So it takes some time to build the application. Before that, Google offers you a lot of features along with it. If you want to do some analytics on top of it, some A/B testing on top of it, everything. If you want to do some machine learning on top of it, everything. So I'm going to disable it for now because my use case is really, really simple. So let's create the project. It takes some time to create the project, and I kind of have fast forward the video a little so that we don't waste a lot of time here. So once it is done, you'll be taken to something called as your project console, right? So you have multiple services on the left side that allows you to go to different places. So we will actually be using hosting, but you're free to welcome all the other services as well. So hosting is where you'll push your static web application. So this is where we'll be doing our work, right? So we have Firebase set up right now. We have created our account. We have created our project. So let us now go and create our first project, right? So as I said, I'll be using Node. I'll be using NPM, and this is my terminal. In Windows, you'll have your command prompt. In Linux-based systems like MacBooks, you'll have your terminal, right? I open my terminal. The commands are all same across the platform. That is the advantage of using a programming language or a framework like Node and NPM, right? So I have Node installed. I have NPM installed. So I have NPM X installed. So NPM X is just an extension of NPM. It comes along with NPM automatically. You install Node, you get all three free of cost, right? So NPX is used to execute some Node libraries without actually installing them globally into your system. So let me clear the screen and start creating my application. So as I said, I'll be creating my application using React.js. So the command to start creating a React application is just say npx create React app and give a name for your application. So the moment you say that, your NPM library package is going to download some content, all the dependencies and stuff like that. So let me just quickly go forward. And when all this is ready, you're going to actually get a website running for you with some demo content in it. You're going to get a website running on your machine for you. So let's see how that goes, right? All right, so it's installing some dependencies. All right, so everything is installed, and now if you see here, it gives you like some instructions, right? So you say npm start to kind of start a new server. You say npm run build to generate the files to deploy to production and test and all that. So what we are interested is in the last two commands. So I go into my webinar directory and then I say npm start, and let's do that. So let's go into the webinar directory. And let's say npm start, right? All right. The moment you say npm start, the React scripts that is installed as a dependency, it's going to create a development server in your own machine, and it is going to start a new window, new Chrome window in your browser. So if you see, the address says localhost :3000. That is where your local web application is running. And this is the application that React create app, that command created for you. So whatever we are going to do, we are going to do on top of this. So we now have the base project ready. Right now, let's try to open this with our IDE, which is Visual Code. All right. So, right. Okay, so this is your first starting page of Visual Code. You have multiple recent projects and all listed here. What we are going to do is we are going to say open folder here and open the folder that we used to build the React app. So I know all this is kind of dry. You want to get into active development immediately, but then this is your one-time work that you have to build, right? So the basement is as important as the building. So that is the reason I'm kind of covering all this. So if you see in this project, we have some public directory, we have the SRC directory. SRC directory is kind of the core of the application. All the React-based files will go inside this. The React.js files will go inside SRC. Public is used to host the static files, like which are like pure HTML, pure images, which doesn't need a lot of React programming and all, right? So, and this IDE also gives a very good way of running your scripts right from the IDE, right? So if you have, if you go to package.json, this is a file maintained by your npm package manager. So you kind of have all your dependencies listed here. When you distribute your code to someone else, some other developer, they can actually make use of this to install all the dependencies and stuff like that. So basically information about your project. And then we have this interesting npm scripts. So instead of saying npm run start on my machine, I could actually just click this start here and it will start a web server, which is very similar to the same, the thing that we saw earlier, right? So this is the basic way that you navigate between an IDE. People who use Eclipse, NetBeans and all should be familiar with this. But then I'm sticking to Visual Studio Code because it's really lightweight and it's really fast and good for me. All right, so this is our app.js, which contains the core of our React application. So if you see, we have this edit that we saw earlier, right? So edit source to and save to reload. You have the link to learn React. You have all this, right? And then we have index.html for content that is not going to change a lot, like the application title and the description of the application that turns up in search engines when you search and all that, right? So let me quickly search that I change the title to something interesting. I believe I'll change to Guru Sharan's Furniture Depot. Yeah, Guru Sharan's Furn Depot. And I'm going to change my description to say something really interesting. I believe this website is going to show a gallery for my website and all that, right? So here we go. So this description is the small text that appears in Google search and the small text that appears when you send the link in WhatsApp and all, right? So this is the small text that appears there. So now I say npm start here, and if you see the bottom, let me just move this seeker here. If you see the bottom, it kind of generates the development server and it starts my server. So let it load. If you see the title, it's changed to Guru Sharan's Furn Depot, and the content is not changed because I didn't change anything in my app.js file. So I'll quickly go to app.js file and change to something so that you see the change reflected here. After we do this, we are going to also deploy this to our Google Cloud real quick, so that you'll have a link that will actually have this content, right? So that makes it really interesting. Once we do that, once we have the development framework ready, we can just start deploying features on top of it. So I changed the content to say this page is going to get more interesting, and if you see, it gets refreshed and you see the change here, right? All right. So now we have our IDE set up. So let's go and, okay, I'm removing all the non-relevant stuff out there to see, yeah. All right, so we have the Visual Studio Code set up. So let's go on to, initializing our Firebase application. So now I have my Firebase project. I have my local project here. I have to connect both. So if you go to Firebase console, it gives you real great information on how to get started. So I go to hosting, I go to get started, and it gives me a set of instructions to follow. So it says npm install -g Firebase tools. So it installs the Firebase tools globally. -g says global, but I'll change this to install it in my own application. So, and then it has other steps. So let's first start by doing this. So I go to my application first and execute the installation command. I'll hide this, right? Oops. All right. So if you see, this actually gives a very cool way of opening your terminal or command prompt here. So I just select bash and it kind of has a terminal running for me. I don't have to switch windows, right? So all cool features of IDEs. Instead of typing in Notepad or Sublime or something and getting things. So I say npm install, and instead of G, I say save dev, which is going to save a local dependency inside this project alone, right? So, and I give the name of the library that I want to install, which is Firebase Tools. So depending on your internet connection, this is going to take some time. For the sake of time, I'm kind of, I've made it a little fast. All right, so you have some packages downloaded. You can ignore this vulnerability for now. We have the application ready. So let's go on to step 2. So I say next. All right, it says I have to execute Firebase login and Firebase init. So the first, because we installed this locally, only for this project, we kind of use the command npx and then give the command that they suggest. So we didn't do it globally. So I say npx Firebase login, and then, okay, I have already logged into my Gmail profile. So otherwise you'll get a link to login, which you click and you log in, you'll come back to this screen again. So then I do my init, Firebase init. So this is where you are going to connect your project to the cloud. So Google provides so much features so that you can get started really fast. As I said, the iteration is going to be really small period and you want to get started as soon as possible. So that is why there are so many companies giving you so much features to build things from scratch, to have so much libraries and all. Everything is kind of ready-made for you so that you can start using, right? So when you say that, when you give that init command, you kind of get a way to configure your project. So I want to use my hosting feature. So I select hosting, I use my arrow keys and press the space to select it, and then press enter to confirm it. When I press enter, it's going to ask me whether I want to use an existing project or whether I want to use create a new project. So we have already created a project. So let's go to existing project, right? All right. So it will ask me what project I want to attach it to. I say Webinar Fun, which is our project right now. All right. So it asks my location of public directory. So public directory is where after you build your project, all the files go into it. The final compiled files will go into this project. So it is different from the public directory that you see here. Create this React scripts package will create your final product inside a folder called build. So we'll give the name of that folder. You can also change it after you kind of complete this step. I'll show you where to change that. But because we know how React works, we know that the directory is build. So let us say build, and I give enter. Okay, now it asks for a question whether it's a single page app or not. Believe me or not, we are going to create just a single page app that has all those features. The app is going to have just a single page though. How does it work? React takes care of it. React gives a lot of dynamic abilities just with a single page. So I'm going to say yes, we are going to use a single page for this. Even though we'll have multiple components, we'll still have a single page for it, right? All right. So if you see, it created some configuration files here, Firebase RC, Firebase JSON, and all that. So, all right. So here is where you can change your public directory later. So if you realize it's not built, oh, I gave a typo or I made a mistake or something, you can always come back here and change it, right? So the final step is to deploy your application, right? So to deploy, they have a command to deploy. You can use that with the npx prefix. But before that, you have to see something. So when we said npm start, we actually built a development version. As you see here, this is the development build and it is not optimized. So you have to run the build command, right? So let us run the build command. So after every change we do, before we deploy, we have to say build and then deploy. I'll also show you a shortcut to do this in one command. We'll use npm scripts for that, but for now we'll do the build command, right? So I built it and kind of showed me success. Now I say Firebase deploy. Note the npx prefix because it's all local, right? So npx prefix, Firebase deploy. It kind of deployed and now it gives me URL. The hosting URL is where my application is actually running now. It is actually running on the web and people can access it, right? So that is the power of using pre-built libraries and pre-built tools to deploy your application. So in a matter of just like 10 to 15 minutes, I have an application hosted somewhere with that URL. So I click that URL and I kind of have the same application running on remote machine. So anybody who accesses this URL can actually see this page, right? So all right. So let's now try to combine both these commands into a single script command. So because every time I make my change, I don't want to say build and then deploy and all that. So I'm going to create a small script inside my package.json file. So that will combine both these commands, right? All right. So I say inside this command, deploy command, I say npm run build and then do Firebase deploy, right? Firebase deploy. All right. Now, when I just say, so if you see here, it creates a new deploy script here, right? So whenever you run this deploy script, it will do both the steps together for us. So that whenever we make changes and we want to deploy, we just make changes and run that command and it will take care of everything. So let me make some change and deploy it right now. So I say, keep looking for changes in this page. I know there's a typo there, but yeah, you can forgive me for that. So the application is running already. It refreshes automatically. So I go to my local application here and I see the changes. So let's deploy it now. Now, instead of saying npm run build, npx Firebase deploy, I kind of just say deploy. It builds it and it also deploys it, right? You have the link ready there. Now, let's click the link or refresh the old page. Hey, we have our content here, right? Keep looking for changes. All right, cool. So now we have an application ready. Let's build our iteration 1. So iteration 1 is going to have like 3 components in it. I'll build a small header. I'll build a gallery which just has a number of images in it, and I'll build a small widget at the bottom that says, that gives the contact information that they want to contact in case of quotations, right? So let's create the header now. So, all right, I've removed all the content from the app component, which is the base component. So if you just see the application, it will be empty right now. So let me insert a small header here. For that, React encourages you to create small components that can be embedded into bigger components. So I'm going to create a small component called header. So I'll create a new file inside src. This is a React component, so I have to create it inside src and not public. So I'm creating a folder view inside that header.jsx. So this extension JSX is used to say that this is a React file. Also, my first statement in the file will be React, because that tells my compiler that, hey, this is a React file. The power of React file is it will allow you to use HTML commands inside your HTML tags inside your component, inside your program. So I just inserted a small div with a class page header. Note, I'm not using the class attribute because in React, you're supposed to use class name instead of class. Class means it's an object-oriented term here. So we use class name, right? I give a class name. If you want to guess why class name is given, to apply styles, right? We create CSS styles. People familiar with web development, you should know that we have CSS files with style sheets. So I create a file called header.scss, and I'm going to apply the styles. The reason why I have this extension SCSS is this is not going to be a simple CSS. I'm going to use a library called SASS, and the extension for that is SCSS. I'll tell you why I'm using this, because it gives some really cool features. For example, in this header, I have this class page header, and inside that I have subheader, right? So similarly, in my CSS file, I can write page header at the top, and inside that I can write the styles for subheader. So in classic CSS, you'll have to write both together again outside, and keep building the entire file. Instead, here I'm writing it hierarchically so that my Sass library will generate such combined CSS together. Now I import my style sheet into this. So let's see how it works. And because I use a third-party library called Node.Sass, I'm supposed to install that third-party library. So how will I install? I say npm install, save. Any third-party library that you use, you say npm install, save Node.Sass, right? So it takes some time to install. Once it is installed, you can use it actually. You don't have to import it, it just becomes available for you. So here I'm inserting my component. So my component name was headers. So when I type header, it gives me a hint. And when I make use of the hint, it also adds the import statement. Again, advantage of using an IDE, right? And if you see here, I'm using a parameter passed to my header so that, the page title, the subheader will actually be dynamic using that parameter, right? So let's give the parameter like this. As you see, I'm giving a parameter just similar to a HTML attribute. And the entire thing is like a HTML tag, right? So React allows you to create such custom components in the form of HTML tags, and you can just combine them into your application. So it kind of gives a very declarative syntax for you to use, right? So instead of putting this entire div out there, you just say header and you give a page, you say all. So I'm just checking, I saw some notification back. So, all right. Now, the moment I saved it, it will auto-compile it again because the application is already running. Bingo, we have our header ready. So, real fast, real cool. And we have all the styles applied. Some pre-built styles are already there in app.css like align center, and that is the reason you see the application in center. We have the header ready, right? Now, let's move on to the next component, which is our quotation component, right? All right. So I have already created the quotation component in the interest of time. Inside this, I have two smaller components like minimized quotation and expanded quotation. And if you see here, I use something called use state. So this is where React gives a lot of flexibility to you. So it is called a React hook. There are multiple React hooks available, and state is one of them. So it allows me to maintain the state of this component. And whenever the state of component changes, it tries to re-render the component with the latest state. So when I say use state, I'm going to give a default state to it, false. So expanded will be false by default. And if I want to change the state, I say set expanded. So set expanded false will actually change it to false. Set expanded true will actually change it to true, right? So based on that, I'm also kind of creating the components here. So if expanded is true, you should know the ternary operator. If expanded is true, it kind of generates the expanded quotation. If expanded is false, it kind of generates the minimized quotation. Similarly, I also pass a function to set it to true or false to, basically switch between them. And if you see here, I kind of call that function whenever on-click happens on the title, right? And I have created a SCSS file, adding some style sheets to, make it really look great. Points of interest are position absolute and bottom right are given so that your component will actually come at the bottom right of the screen, right? So now we have the component ready, but the last part is to connect to import and connect that component to our main page, right? So I'm going to app and I'm going to add it here. So if you want your component to be visible on screen, you either add it to your main page or you add it to any component that is already added to your main page. So you can basically create hierarchy there. So I create a quick quotation component here. There are no arguments for it, so I just say / close, right? The moment I kind of save this, my application will be recompiled and you will see here. right? All right. So you see a small component here that says request quotation. On clicking it, it will actually expand to show me an expanded version, right? I know it's really not graphically great. The color choices are like really might be little not too mild, but then it serves the purpose of a lot of for the demo, right? So I have an email link, I have a mobile link that I can use. So next we are going to create the last part of the first iteration, which is the gallery, right? So trust me, this first iteration takes a little long time, but the future iterations are going to be really fast, right? So that is why we go in an iterative model, right? So let's go on to last step of the first iteration. So creating the gallery component. So for this, I actually downloaded a number of images from the internet, basically furniture images, and I put them in my public directory. So I created some components. Before that, I'll go to the public directory and show you some images that I downloaded. So I downloaded some images for different rooms, bedroom, dining room, kitchen, and all that, right, from the internet, so that I can use it in my sample application. So the way I rig them with program is by creating components to show these images, right? Let me quickly go over. So if you see here, I created a new folder called gallery. Inside that, I have a component called gallery.jsx. I have a style sheet. I have a JS file. So inside that JS file, I just maintain the list of images, right? The URLs of the images. So this is how you access something in your public directory. You give slash, and the slash refers to the beginning of your public folder. And inside that, we have images, we have different rooms, and inside the rooms, we have different images of the furniture, right? So let's go there real quick, right? So basically, I'm referring to all the images. Now, this is my component, real simple component, real small. So I import the images list, and I use images.map, which is the built-in function that will basically go through all the elements of that and create the whatever element that you give inside it, right? So here I create img, I give a class that I can use in CSS. I give the source from the element. So images is an array. Every element of the array will be passed as image URL to this component, and it will create it, right? So now we have the component created fully. Let's create the style sheet for that component. So I quickly move on to style sheet. So I set the width and height of the images. I set some margin. I set some shadow so that that image looks really, a little effective on screen. So the last part, as I said, you have to connect it to your application. So let me add it between the header and quotation. All right, the moment I add it, it is auto imported, and I close it. So I save it, it recompiles. The moment I save, you'll see this recompiling here. And now here we have the images, right? So just small pieces of code that actually gave me this entire gallery. And guess what? Our first iteration is ready, right? We have an MVP. I have the list of all the products that I have. I have a way of requesting quotation. And I can actually give this to my users so that they can use this app. So what I'm going to do is basically deploy this to my remote server. Fantastic. So kind of builds and deploys. Let me quickly go over to. So it actually took me 2 hours to build this application, and 1 hour to build this application, and that actually shows the power of using a lot of modern frameworks and libraries out there. So I kind of can deliver this product just like that in an hour to my end user, and they can use it, right? So with this, I'm kind of going to go real fast into the other 2 iterations, and then we are going to pause for Q&A. All right. So let's move on to the next iteration, which is going to create some links on the page, right? So I'm going to go inside gallery and make some changes. So firstly, I changed my images thing to give it by section. So living room, dining room, and all that. I have some text. I have some a set of images to be displayed in the top row, a set of images to be displayed in the bottom row, and then a text to be displayed in between. I make some changes. I'm going to really skip the coding part because it's going to use the same state and all that, and on click and all. I create a menu component. So let's quickly rush between the code here. So once the menu component is created, in the on-click part of the menu, I kind of call the on-click property of the parent, which will change the room for me, right? On change room. So which will kind of change the selected room. So let us see this in action right now. So I'm just adding that change room property also in the parent. So here, when I say on change room, it is going to set the page here. And when the page is changed, your header will also change. We'll see that in action right now, right? So final check, everything looks good. I'm gonna save this app. App is saved. Here we go. So we have the menu here, and we have kind of formatted this a little in a pleasing way, right? So I can actually click on the different links. It will actually navigate to different things, different rooms, furniture. And if you see, the page header also changes because we have that page state variable maintained there. So my second iteration is ready, and I'm going to rush through the deployment. Again, the CSS takes care of a lot of things like hover effects. I say deploy, and this is ready for my end user to consume. See, the demo took just a minute, and the implementation took me like just 20 minutes to implement the second iteration. So that is the power of going in an iterative manner. Again, I'm repeating this word iteration because it gives a lot of customer pleasing effects in the end, right? So for the final iteration, we are going to implement search. So, and with this, we are going to get the entire application into picture. So for search, I basically add some tags for my images. So every image, I attach some tags so that when the user searches with this tag, he can see this image in the result. And I create the search component, which is a text box, and I create them and I insert it into my menu. And then I have the search results component, which will actually do the filtering process, right? So for filter, I use a third-party library called Lodash. So by now you should know how to install third-party libraries. You say npm install save Lodash, it will kind of install it. So I'm not going to show it in my demo. And I have also removed the crux of the application, right? The main image gallery out as a small component outside, so that my final component will look like real small, right? So this is my final component. I called all these functions in different events, like when the user clicks on search, when the user clicks on a link, and everything. So here, if the search term is given, you'll see the search results. If the search term is not given, you will just see the gallery for that room, right? So let's quickly save and deploy this. All right. So for deployment, I'll actually use my own screen here. So this is the end deployed application that you see on my screen. So I can kind of search for it. Say I search for Royal. I see things that have the tag Royal. And say I search Brown. I see the things that have Brown in them. So basically, this is how I kind of develop the full app within a real short period of time, right? So that's it. I'm going to pause here for any questions that you folks might have. So any questions, folks?
Thank you, Guru. We'll go ahead and take some time for questions
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the chat box. I think we have a question. Is there any specific difference between traditional software development method and agile software
Yes,
method?
definitely, right? So you react to changes real fast in agile. So when I say you just have a week's time or 2 weeks time to develop a full feature, and you get early feedback as well that way. So, and in traditional way, usually people take some time planning, designing the architecture and all that. Whereas in Agile, because you're going to develop a small feature, and even project managers will have to think in terms of small features. They kind of think real fast, they kind of design it real fast, they kind of develop it real fast. So it's more about speed and getting to the customer early and getting early feedback and stuff like that. So that's the major difference that I see. But waterfall method does work in some cases as well.
So, which is the best framework for web development?
Oh, that's a very tricky question to answer, actually. Every framework is useful for different purposes. So I'm a big fan of React.js because I work in that, and it's really easy just that you to create a new application and all that. So there are similar frameworks like AngularJS I've heard that you can use, and it offers a lot of features as well. So I'm not going to give you a straight answer because every framework has its own advantages and disadvantages. But React is quite easy to learn to get started, and then you can build upon other things. But you're supposed to be knowing JS, which is JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, like really important.
Server-based versus serverless for small-scale industries, which it can be sure.
Sorry, I didn't get that question. Can you repeat that?
So it's for small industries, for small-scale industries. What kind of whether I can use server-based kind of application or serverless kind of application?
So it depends on what you want to do. If you want some backend database and all that. So right now, what I didn't need a database, and it is actually enough for a small furniture company to get started. It was free of cost. I developed it in just one day. Of course, I understand the style is not real great, but these kinds of things don't really need a full-fledged server running, and you can get most of the things free of cost. So if you really want some database and all that, and you're expecting a lot of users, in that case, you should actually go for a server model. But if you have users sporadically using it now and then, it's better to go over serverless models. Serverless is an entire topic on its own, actually.
Yes, serverless is better for these kind of deployment strategies.
So again, the actual use of serverless is depending on how you want your application to be used, right? So if you have small pieces of work that has to be done, and if you don't have users wanting to use your application like 24 hours, then yes, you can go serverless, because today serverless applications will cost you like really less. For say, if your request is running for just 1 minute or so, you have to pay just for that 1 minute. So if it's a small application with small number of users with small pieces of actions to be done, I think it would be better to go to serverless. Whereas if you have a large set of application that has a lot of things with a lot of users, you have to go to a server model. So it's basically how you want your application to be used and what features you are developing. And it's definitely not based on the deployment model. So deployment model is just going to help you go to production. But what you build is going to drive what architecture that you design, right?
Okay, it looks like we have covered almost all the questions. Guru, is there anything else you wanted to cover before the wrap up?
I just want to say the attendees not to stop learning. I'm a big fan of learning myself, and the internet has a lot of things. So when people ask me, can you give me some link for me to learn this topic or something, I usually say, go to Google and search. You'll have multiple links. Open the first or second link. That is more than enough to start getting started with an application. And that is just for theoretical knowledge. Second knowledge, you have to get your hands on your keyboard and mouse, and you have to actually get going with designing and development. That is how you try to brush up your skills as a developer. And just don't learn software development, learn software engineering as a whole. So engineering is where you kind of do this planning, you kind of do this breaking of iterations and all that. So that is more important in today's industry rather than just, yeah, I'm a great C++ programmer. That's not going to help you get anywhere after the first 2 years in your organization. So what is really going to help is, hey, I can break a big application into 5 chunks and I can go to production in 1 week. So that is going to turn a lot of heads. So that is where today's industry is also going to. You see startups coming in every nook and corner. So they are looking for professionals such as these, and not professionals who are just good at C and C++ and Java and whatnot, right? So That would be my parting message. Don't stop learning, keep yourself up to date, and get your hands dirty with the keyboard, with programming. So that's been my mantra. People who know me always hear this from me. So I might bore folks when I say this.
Yeah, so quite interesting.
Yeah.
Now it's time to conclude our event. Thank you very much, Guru, for
Sure.
spending your valuable time with us in your busy schedule.
Sure.
I hope everyone enjoyed the session. Now you can take up any kind of problem and you can use this kind of agile approach to develop your application. And thank you very much for the very informative session, Guru.
Yeah.
On behalf of Jaya Group of Institutions and all the participants, once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice initiative by Jaya Group as well. So good to spread knowledge.
So great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Next schedule tomorrow at 10 a.m. Topic fundamentals of IT audit by Ms. Kala Madhuri Doraiswamy. She's a risk assurance senior manager from Ernst and Young's Advisory Services. She is connecting from California, US. So I request all to connect at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you all for your active participation. And kindly thank all the people who are responsible for the success of this particular webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you, and all. Thank you.
Bye all. Stay safe. Bye bye.